So I want to start with the most obvious question, which is, what do you mean when you say addicted to drama? What does that even mean?
It's the unnecessary turmoil. It's the exaggeration. It's the performative aspect of the use of the dysregulated use of energy, action, emotion in the dysfunctional way of adaptation. Like,
Okay, those were a lot of big words.
those were a lot of big words. We can break them down.
But the most important word that I just heard
yeah,
was unnecessary.
yeah, the unnecessary turmoil, the unnecessary exaggeration and intensification.
Love that. Here's what I just got from that definition.
Yeah,
I think this is super easy to spot in other people.
yeah,
It's the person who's like the bull in the china shop and everything's about them and they're very blustery.
yeah.
But you just included me in the definition when you said unnecessary turmoil.
Yeah.
And I never considered myself to be a person who is addicted to drama, but I can see and admit that there are many areas and examples in my life where I create unnecessary turmoil for myself. And so for the person listening, can you just go even deeper?
Yeah.
Could you walk us through some of the questions that you might ask somebody?
Yeah.
To help them realize, wow, I am addicted to drama in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions you can ask is, do you use language like extremely, literally, always, very, really, never, that sort of extreme language? Do you feel anxious or bored when things are calm? I know I'm raising my hand.
Used to.
Used to, yeah, same. Do you end up gossiping and stirring things up? Gossiping is so interesting because it makes us feel included, but at a cost.
Right. And the thing to remember about gossiping is if people do it with you, they
doing
always do it about you.
Exactly. You crave extreme situations and sensations. So that might be big feelings. It might be big actions like, like jumping out of an airplane and
or partying every night or lots of hookups or
Absolutely. You pull people into your crisis.
This is the victim form of drama.
This is the victim, but it's also what we call drama bonding. So it's a way of feeling connection. So it's like, hey, Mel, oh my God, you're not going to believe who I saw in the lobby. He gave me this weird look. And all of a sudden you're saying, oh, tell me more. And then I'm pulling you in. I'm pulling you into my vortex. So you're like an inclusive.
Dramatic person.
If you find yourself generalizing one bad situation and making it universal. So it's that like, someone cut me off on the road today and what a terrible day it is.
Or
like
everybody that I've met is a loser. I'm not dating. What's up with men? I can't handle this anymore. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Have you said those lines before?
No.
Oh, okay.
I hear a lot of my friends say them though.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, ooh. Yeah. The catchphrase, it's always something.
Always something.
It's always something. And I have other friends who I'm like, it's always something. And I go, what's always something?
And then she'd just look at you and be like, you always have something.
That is true. Yeah. You feel more alive under pressure. So like waiting to the deadline to get things done. You're preoccupied with fixing things. You play out a scenario or interaction over and over again in your head, even changing the storyline a little bit at each time, and then possibly venting it to your friends as well. So if you find yourself retelling the same story more than twice, I would ask you, what about it haven't you processed yet? Why do you need to retell it? Because basically you're just spreading the drama.
It's sort of like the person that talks about the breakup and then how the person has moved on and they've been doing it for months and months and months. And by talking about it and being dramatic about it and stirring it up, they keep it at the surface, but they don't drop into the deeper feelings of loneliness and inferiority and abandonment and fear.
Yes. And replaying it keeps you out of being in contact with those vulnerable feelings.
What are some of the signs that you might feel internally?
And it's important, again, to recognize how we view someone addicted to drama on the outside is different than how people feel on the inside.
Okay.
So from the inside, you might say things, I don't feel like I can direct my own reality. I don't have control. And my internal world has a lot of pain and wounding in it. And from the outside, someone might be like, it feels like everything they're doing is being controlled, manipulated, and measured. On the inside, it's intense. There's an intensity, there's a sensation that you're always kind of uneased and about to erupt, and that everything is urgent. Like everything is an emergency, because that's how we're viewing it from the inside. And from the outside, it feels like they're bulldozing, overpowering, and like this frenetic energy that just can't be contained.
This topic, addicted to drama, is so critical, is because without understanding where you or other people that you care about are addicted to this cycle of drama in their life, you will never experience peace and happiness.
Yeah, it doesn't allow you to, because peace, stillness, ease is unsafe.
What do you mean?
For those of us who have some propensity or have some addiction to drama, which is quite a few of us, getting to that point of stillness, ease, actually feels terrifying. It feels like death, or we notice it in the reflex of our mind. Okay. So if you've ever gone to a meditation class or been in a bath or just walking through a garden, so you're in this peaceful place. The environment is right to find more ease and stillness. Right. And yet there's this moment where you drop down and then something happens, like an alarm goes off. We call that a revving reflex. And you start thinking about the next day at work. Yes. You start thinking about that ex. You start getting on your phone. You start looking at people, your ex, whomever on the phone. You start doing things that interrupt that ease and that stillness. Yeah. Why? Why, when we're sad, do we go play even sadder music? Why are we rushing down the street when we have nowhere to go? Why? Well, part of it's this addiction to drama, this constant sense of dis-ease and urgency that is within us. And that revving reflex helps us stay out of contact with the vulnerability of what hasn't been processed. Okay, I'm having a huge light bulb moment. Oh, tell me about it. Because, Dr. Scott, when I think about being addicted to drama, I hear that phrase. Yeah. And I think about external things, right? Yeah. When I heard addicted to drama, and I hear that phrase, I think about someone who on the surface is flipping out or annoying as hell. Yeah. Yeah. Or narcissistic, or controlling, or whatever. That's not actually what you're talking about. That's one aspect of it. Here's what I'm getting. Yeah. That an addiction to drama is a way to identify and label childhood trauma, the effect of growing up in a chaotic household, the effect of having sustained emotional abuse or sexual or physical abuse, or simply having this experience in your body where you feel on edge all the time. Yeah. And I've heard a lot of people in my work and in the research that we do talk about the fact that, I grew up with experiences where I felt like, when is the other shoe going to drop? Yeah. When is dad going to come home drunk? Yeah. When is, there going to be another shooting on my block? Yeah. When are we going to run out of money? And that you called it, what did you call it? A revving? A revving reflex. A revving reflex. That another way to think about this sense in your life that you have to always be ready for the next thing. Yes. That is the revving reflex going all the time, it sounds like. Absolutely. It's the anticipation, the readiness for the next bad thing, for the next trauma. We trace the drama to avoid our traumas. Okay, let's unpack that, because you're basically saying, whether you are the annoying person in your friend group, in your family, where it's all about you all the time, you can't help it, you're even sick of your own stuff. Yeah. Or you're the person who is sitting quietly in the corner. Yeah. With no external evidence that there is drama. Yeah. But you are so in your head
and so either anxiety ridden or on edge or just bracing all the time that the drama is actually internal.
Yeah, that internal revving.
Got it. Oh, wow.
So that's the spectrum right there.
What made you want to call this drama?
Well, I mean, for
because that feels a little bit more accessible.
Yeah.
Like it like in some way, if I were to call that revving or that on edge sensation in my body, and having been somebody that really struggled with anxiety for 45 years until I really understood that it was in my body, not in my head. Calling it drama feels way nicer and actually more accessible than calling it something like childhood sexual trauma stored in my nervous system. Like I kind of like the idea. Okay, it's just drama in my nervous system.
Yeah.
Like, why did you start to study this? Why the word drama?
Yeah. I mean, drama is reclaiming. So we have these like derogatory terms like drama queen.
Oh.
And when most people go, there's such a drama queen or drama addict, it's usually in a very derogatory context.
That's true.
And I wanted to reclaim it. And I wanted to say, okay, so we have this familiar term that all of us or most of us know. Someone walks in, they take the air out of the room. We know that person.
Yeah.
We know that they have some like proclivity towards drama,
right.
Some addiction to it.
Right. Or is this also the kind of person that they just can't get out of their own way?
Yes.
They get sober, then they relapse.
Yeah.
They
keep dating the person that hurts them.
Yes.
Why? And it's like, yeah, we can look at attachment patterns, but it all leads back to the same physiological process.
Which is what?
Which is that it helps you distract, it gives you energy, and it's a pain reliever. That is what drama does.
And drama is anything that what?
That gives you a stress response, basically. That raises those cortisol levels, that makes you revved up. And part of it is, when I talk about the exaggeration and the intensification of something, like most people think of drama addicts as performative.
Right, exactly. Right? This is what I'm getting at, that you're actually talking about a much larger spectrum.
Yeah.
Like, what does it look like for somebody who is not, quote, the drama queen or doesn't, quote, suck the air out of the room, but is suffering from an addiction to drama on the inside?
Yeah. Well, it all has the same physiological response.
Okay.
It all gives you that revved up stress response.
Okay.
And in that, so that's one of the important things, is that whatever the behavior is, so whether we're overscheduling ourselves, whether we're gossiping, whether we're getting into another fight with someone in order to feel closer to them, whatever it is that is the behavior, it all has the same physiological. It gives us that boost of energy. It gives us pain relief. It's an anesthetic. Stress is an anesthetic. Just like when you go running. Do you run?
Used to. Before bladder surgery.
Okay.
And 3 children.
Or jumping into a cold pool.
Yeah.
I mean, those type of stress responses give us a flood of pain relief hormones, right?
You're right, but I don't think about it that way, because when you think about drama in your life, it causes a lot of pain.
Yeah. Drama's not about making sense. It's about making sensation. And that sensation gives you a sense of feeling alive when most of your internal experience is feeling numb. So it gives you enough, the decibel of volume of sensation is high enough to rise above the threshold of numbness to go, I feel something. And that numbness comes from a trauma response that's protective, that survival response. Then we start to feel like we don't exist. We don't belong. And so we start to crave sensation. We start to reach for it. We start to manifest it. We start to find ourselves in scenarios or even create scenarios in our head that give us some type of experience, give us sensation to go, oh, at least I feel something, even if it's bad. And especially if that something gives me that heightened stress response, I feel energized, because that's the first stage of a stress response, is it releases energy into our body. And the second part is it releases a flood, a cascade of hormones that gives us some pain relief or disconnection from the underlying pain and trauma that we are hiding from, that we have to hide from as a means of survival.
Or that we don't even know is there.
Or that we don't even know is there, but is plaguing us.
Huh. This is so how did you like get into this? Why did you decide to research this?
Yeah.
How did you discover that you had an addiction to drama?
Yeah. Well, I was always in the arts, and that was an indicator as I like performing in front of thousands of people. It's like that moment where you feel like the rise of excitement and energy. I was like, oh my God, I feel alive. And I don't feel that in the rest of my life. Interesting. And I was going through a divorce in my late 20s, and I was depressed. I was at the lowest point of my life. I had to move in with my parents. I just couldn't function. And I found that when I called my ex or got into fights with my sister or watched Bravo, whatever it was that created some type of tension, I felt alive again. And I started to reflect back on that, and I was like, wait, so these moments of tension, of angst, of anxiety, of anger, that's when I feel alive? That's not the life I want to live. When I would watch the news and I would go call a friend and be like, did you see that?
Right.
And I'd feel alive. I'd feel part of something. I'd feel like we were an in-group and we had something to share, and I felt belonging. And then the moment I hung up, I felt alone again. And I was like, oh, so I don't want to live a life where the moments I actually feel a relationship are either in fighting or in gossiping.
That's how a lot of people bond.
I know.
Is by complaining or gossiping about other people, or complaining about their life, or griping about what's wrong.
Yeah, we drama bond.
Drama bond.
We throw logs on each other's fire, and we feel like we're part of something.
Yes.
And I bring you into my tornado of chaos, and all of a sudden I feel a sense of connection because my internal world is matching the external world, and you're in it. And that just isn't a sustainable form of relationship. And
is it true that you even faked your own suicide?
Yeah.
So tell me that story.
Yeah, I was in high school, and I was at my wit's end. I was being bullied by teachers. I was told I was stupid by teachers, that I would never pass high school. I was being shoved into lockers, and I needed an out. I needed a way of surviving, and I didn't want to end my life, but I wanted people to feel the pain I was feeling so that they could somehow empathize finally with me and save me. I wanted to be saved. And so I set the scene. I wrote the note. I put the pills on the ground. I created the performance of my death. And what I came to understand later is what I called weaponized empathy. Even though there were people in my life who could relate to me, letting my guard down was too painful, was too scary. And so I couldn't actually recognize that there were people who could empathize with me. The only way I could understand empathy was if they were in the same pain I was in, or something in close to it, proximity to it. It's like an eye for an eye.
Right.
And so many of us do that. We see these fights with partners. Like, if you don't truly understand my pain. And so we bully them into being in the same sense of pain we are in. And so I did that as a young adult.
How old are you?
I was 16 the first time.
Wait, the first time?
Yeah, I didn't get what I needed. And part of why I didn't get what I needed is because I wasn't safe enough in my own body to receive people's love and care, validation. And we see that with those who are addicted to drama. We say, like, I'm here for you. And they don't hear it, because hearing it would mean they have to let the drawbridge down of relationship. And that would also let the bad things in.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, my mom has often said to me, why would I go to therapy at my age?
Yeah.
So I have to dig up all that stuff I don't want to deal with. Yeah. What if I find out I don't like my life?
Yeah.
What if I find out I don't like your father? What if I find out I don't like you? Like, I don't want to like let that in. And so there's a huge part of this that I can see as you're telling this story. What I see in myself is that same busyness. Yeah. That trying to outrun all the things that I did not want to have to face. And realizing when I finally slowed down these past couple years that I was actively blocking the love that people were trying to pour into me.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't yet faced the stuff that needed healing.
Yeah.
And so your first attempt was when you were 16. And then did they how did your parents respond? What did they try to do to intervene? Like, did they send you to therapy? Did you go inpatient? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I did inpatient.
And did it help? Did it not? Did it?
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay.
It was a place of safety.
Okay.
And so they would let me out because I was doing so well. And I'd have to go back to that school where I was being bullied and, harmed by faculty. I mean.
And were you out at this point in your life?
No.
Okay.
So it wasn't even part of the conversation as to, I actually got more bullied because I had such severe learning disabilities.
Oh.
Than I did about my sexuality.
Gotcha.
Sometimes I'd be pushed into lockers and called fag or other names, but really it was like that dumb kid.
Oh, and then they that was the era where they would take us out of class and put you in the special track. And so you just knew.
Yeah.
And so this continued on.
Yeah.
This seeking attention and wanting to be seen, but not feeling seen.
Yeah. Seeking to be seen, not feeling seen, and not able to accept being seen. And that's the conflict right there. It's because even though it's something we want, it feels too dangerous to get it. So many of us, to be seen means that we're also being seen in the things that we are trying to avoid. The things that are too painful to be in contact with. And so one of the aspects of addiction to drama is to keep running away from that point of contact, which is ourselves. When we have early traumas, we disconnect from ourselves. We get a divorce from ourselves. We call that dissociation.
Right.
And it leaves a void.
Okay.
And when we start filling that void up with anything, we become dependent on it, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, whether it's stress. And when we fill that void, what it's also doing is it's helping us stay away from what's underneath that void, underneath that hole or at the pit of that hole, which is the root of so much suffering, which is our trauma.
How do you identify that it's drama that you're addicted to? Keeping in mind that this might be the first time that the person listening is considering, wow, I'm always waiting for the next shoe to drop.
Yep.
I'm always stirring something up.
Yeah.
I do bitch with my partner or pick fights.
Or I feel closer to them after a fight than I do in moments of ease.
Yes. Yeah. So wait, you're saying that we pick fights to feel closer with somebody?
It's the places where we feel safer.
Why do we feel safer when we're fighting?
Well, one of the symptoms of an addiction drama is there's always a sense of dis-ease. There's a sense of constant urgency. And from the outside, it looks like someone with an addiction drama is like bulldozing. But on the inside, they feel out of sync. That their own sense of timing feels disproportionate to the timing of other people. And their energy, their attention, their emotion are disproportionate to other people. And I can go into the physiology.
Please, let's hear it.
The best example I can give is I was renting an Airbnb recently. And those carbon monoxide detectors, when the battery's dead, it goes beep.
Yes.
Beep, and it doesn't stop.
Yes, it's so annoying.
So annoying. And somebody hid the carbon monoxide detector, and I couldn't find it.
In this Airbnb rental?
In this Airbnb. And it was going like every 55 seconds. I timed it. And then I started to notice, oh my gosh, I'm actually in an anticipation state. So I'm already getting ready for the next beep. I feel my body tensing. Yep. I feel my attention zooming in onto where it could be. And that's what trauma does. So often we think trauma is just stored in the body. Mm-hmm. But trauma is also about how we get ready for the next possible trauma.
Explain more about that.
So all of our senses, the way we smell, the way we hear, start to attune, like a TV channel, to the next possible danger.
Gotcha.
So we're looking for it. That is the filter of our life.
Like it could be your boss. It could be
your boss. Could be
friends. Could be all this stuff.
So all of our senses are more attuned towards danger than safety. So that is what we find. So when those who are addicted to drama are like saying it's always something, it's because that is the channel to which they see the world. That's the channel that's on, the world that is dangerous. And so they constantly feel and are responding to that world of danger. They feel it in their whole nervous system. There's a sense of dis-ease. Dis-ease is also because they feel disconnected to themselves. There's so much suppression, repression, because they had to disconnect from the trauma that's stored in their body. And the symptom of that lets us know there's a disconnection is dis-ease. We feel that sense of urgency because we're out of sync with the world as we know it. Our world, if we're addicted to drama, feels dangerous. The world that everyone else is in, who
looks
doesn't
easy.
have that, looks easy.
Simple.
And so there's a sense of being in dissonance, out of sync with everyone.
So can I ask you another question? Because when you said that word, it's always something. Are there other catchphrases that people that have this addiction to drama, like I'm thinking about the fact that one of my daughters always says, and I used to say this too, I always feel like I'm on the outside.
Yes.
Looking in. I always feel like everybody else has it figured out, but I don't. Like, is that like a catchphrase that you might say to yourself?
Yeah. No one ever gets me.
Yeah.
No one's ever here for me. No one's got my back. And then someone next to you is like, but I'm here with you. My friend picked me up from the airport maybe a year ago, and she brought all my favorite food and my favorite water. And I had just gone through a breakup, and I got in the car, and I was like, she's like, how are you? And I was like, sad. I feel like no one loves me. And she's like, I just brought you your favorite food. I picked you up from the airport. And I was like, oh gosh, you're right. Thank you for breaking me out of that.
Yes.
It's such an old script that I replay sometimes when I'm not feeling well or not feeling, secure in myself. But the reality is I know there's love out there, but I couldn't, in my childhood, I couldn't be with it. It wasn't safe.
You're just helping me have a little bit of empathy for a friend of mine who I will not name, but this particular friend has this extremely annoying habit of texting in a passive aggressive way. When are we ever going to see you? Or heaven forbid, I am in the town that this person lives in. Yeah. Inevitably, if this person sees that I am in town, instead of getting hey, I see you're in town. Do you have time? Let's hang out. It's, oh, thanks a lot for not saying that you were coming. And I'm like, fuck you. Like, why are you unloading this on me? And what you're making me see is that this person isn't a jerk. This person has an addiction to this drama, and they feel a sense of not being important.
There's a sense of not feeling important. There's a sense of not being seen, which is a chronic issue of the original trauma often. And I'm assuming they go from seeing something on the internet and creating a narrative or story, and then having an emotional response to the story as opposed to what's actually happening.
Yes.
And so what you could sometimes say is, I hear the story you're creating is that I'm not here for you. But if we can take a step back, I'd love to get together and connect. Because this is the hard part about being around someone who's addicted to drama, is often they're rolling down the hill of drama.
Yes.
That inertia, you cannot stop. I don't know about your friend, but if you were to say, like, I'm here, let's get together, they're like, no, it's too late.
Yes, 1,000%.
You've hurt me. I don't know what I can do.
Yes.
Everyone hurts me. And they just keep pulling all these logs on and to burn their fire hotter.
Yes.
The drama fire.
Yes.
And you can't stop it.
Well, I was doing this to myself too. So that's an example of somebody on the external.
That's an external rever.
Let me tell you, the internal one is when I would say, probably 5 or 6 years ago, as I was really starting to feel lonely. My kids were getting older, and I was no longer seeing a lot of friends because we're all super busy, and I'm working all the time. And I started to tell myself a story that I have no friends, and And I started to tell myself a story that all of my old friends were always getting together.
Yeah.
And they were getting together without me. And I kept repeating this story, and it kept me isolated. It kept me feeling lonely. Yeah. It kept me from reaching out to people. Yeah. It made me feel separate from everybody else. It actually made me miserable because I convinced myself that all of our old friends were having wonderful parties and enjoying life, and everything was fantastic, and we were the losers that nobody liked or ever invited anywhere. And of course, now I know nobody was getting together with anybody. Everybody was busy as hell and starting to feel lonely. Yeah. And it was a complete dramatic scene that I had created and was the main character in.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that sounds so fucking painful.
Well, I think based on the number of comments and topic requests that we get, I would be willing to put money on the fact that 90% of you listening can relate to that story.
Yeah. I think it's so common how we internally we create these stories that that reenact our childhood traumas, that keep us further away.
Well, so for somebody who's never even considered this, could you give us an example that is relatable to how some kind of trauma that a lot of people may have experienced in their childhood, might not even consider it to be trauma. Yeah. Can you give us an example of how that can create an addiction to drama as an adult?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of us have some sense in our life of not being seen and heard. That's a kind of a very familiar wound for many of us. And so, especially as young kids, what do? We don't have very many options. So we disconnect. We disconnect from the feeling. We focus on something else. And it's a repression of it.
I think I have an example.
Yeah.
And it's one I did to my kids.
Okay, tell me.
So when our kids were in middle school, I was starting to travel a lot, and my husband was the stay-at-home dad. And one of the things that our daughters in particular say that we did terribly as parents is that my husband, because of how he was raised, would always say to them, try to get a ride home. And meanwhile, I'm off traveling. I have no idea this is happening. I did not grow up in a family where anybody ever said, try to get a ride home. I lived close enough to the school I could walk home if worse came to worse, but our kids could not walk home from where they were. And so Chris, because of his frickin' childhood, where nobody picked him up, was constantly telling our middle school daughters, see if you can't get a ride home. And so they would be feeling at the end of a soccer match the panic that they're responsible for bumming a ride home with somebody.
Or abandoned.
All of it. And fast forward now, I realize that there is a lot of drama in our family around getting out of the house because it becomes this like, experience in our family. Because they have this unresolved issue of feeling abandoned. And then it's getting triggered when we as a family are trying to go somewhere and they're starting to feel like nobody's going to be there on time. We're not going to be there on time. This is a very familiar experience. And that starts, is this an example of it?
Yeah, it's a beautiful example of the disproportionate response to a very basic stimulus.
Yes.
It's like blowing out a candle with a fire hose. It doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, it's sprinkling outside. We better go into the bomb shelter. It's like, we're going to leave the house. Come on, Mel, we got to go. We're going to be late. Everyone's going to hate us.
You're 1,000% in our kitchen right now.
Let's go to St. Petersburg, Florida, where Chantel is waiting to ask me a question. Chantel, welcome to the live stream. Hi. So you wrote in with a question, but why don't you just tell me a little bit about the issue that you're dealing with?
So my girlfriend and I I've been dating for like a little over 2 years. And right now with this whole pandemic issue, I think I have the biggest communication problem in our relationship. She's very expressive and she wants to know how I feel about things and what I'm thinking. And I internalize a lot of things. I don't want to communicate. You know, growing up, that really wasn't something that was taught. Like everyone that I have seen, like growing up, my family, everyone just shuts down, withdraws. And okay, abuela, estoy en un meeting.
Oh, that's right. I'm not seeing that. Who is that?
Okay, my grandmother.
Hi, Grandma. How are you? Welcome to the live stream, Grandma. She's adorable. I love her hot pink pants. Amazing. We love you. Thank you for taking care of her. Adorable. Okay.
So, sorry about that.
So keep going. So you grew up in a
Oh,
family where you were witnessing the adults shutting down to avoid conflict?
Yeah, everyone shuts down, withdraws, no one wants to talk, and then a few days or weeks or even months go by, and then it's like, okay, just move on and act like nothing ever happened. That's what I witnessed, and that's what I have been doing, and I've gotten a lot better, you know, reading some books and watching videos and stuff and just learning more about how to communicate better. But it's like, even like right now, because I'm not working and just being in each other's face 24/7, it's like, okay, no, I withdraw. I just, you know, I don't even want to talk about it. And I'll go, you know, I just want to sleep. And it's like, just let the days go by. Hopefully this will be over soon. And, you know, and it just doesn't go over well with her. So.
And what is her reaction when you withdraw? When you withdraw, do you just get silent or do you leave the room? What's your mode of withdrawing?
I just feel like when there's like a lot of tension between us, I just want to go, you know, out for a walk or something, or even just lay in bed, and I don't even want to talk. And she wants to try and work things out and like, let's talk about this. What's bothering you? You know, how can we find a solution? And I'm like, you know, just forget it. I internalize a lot of things. And so she'll say something and I immediately jump to the conclusion that she doesn't love me anymore, or well, this isn't going to work, or something's wrong with our relationship. What's going on? And she's more of a like, let's find a solution, you know. And I'm like, I freak out and I like, you know, just withdraw. And yeah.
Well, so Chantel, there's so much that I want to share with you that is going to change not only your relationship, but it's going to change your life, because it's going to give you an understanding of why you're doing what you're doing. And it's going to give you a couple simple tools that you can use to start to crack the code on being able to both draw boundaries for yourself emotionally, so that you feel supported, while you're also working on becoming a better communicator. Okay. So this question is so relevant for so many couples, and I'm so proud of you for sharing it. The first thing I want to do is I want to acknowledge you, because you zeroed in on the reason why you do this. Every single one of us learned how to communicate positively or negatively based on what we saw growing up. And it takes hold in us before you even realize. Most of this patterning is what I'm going to call it, that you have absorbed. You absorbed by the age of 5. So if what you saw in your household is that the moment there was conflict, people shut down, this is a pattern. It's neither good nor bad. It's just a pattern. We all learned our parents' patterns. Our parents were just doing the best that they could. It's not a matter of whether or not your parents are good parents or bad parents. This is just how your parents and your caregivers dealt with the stress and conflict in their life. They avoided it. And so it's no surprise that you now are an adult feeling stuck. And the reason why you feel stuck is because you are stuck in a pattern. And the reason why I like talking about it in terms of patterns is because it's not personal. The great thing about patterns is once you recognize that you have one and you can identify it and you can identify the situations where this pattern takes over like that, and suddenly next thing you know, you're sleeping in your bed instead of talking to your girlfriend. Once you identify the pattern, you see that it's broken because it's making you feel broken right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you don't have control over yourself. And so what I want you to first understand is, number one, you're really smart because you know the origin of this. Number two, you simply have a pattern that's broken now that you're an adult. And number three, you can replace patterns that are broken because you're not broken. You just have a pattern that are broken. Okay. So how does that make you feel knowing it's simply a pattern and we can replace it?
Yeah. That feels really good. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm learning to do that now at 31.
Hey, you know what? I'm 51. I'm 2 decades ahead of you. There's I am dealing with every day. It seems like I see another pattern. And so here's the thing that I want you to understand about patterns. Patterns like this, patterns of behavior, they are not stored up here. They are in your nervous system. There's a term called ghosts in the nursery, which refers to something that psychologists talk about, which basically means that when you were itty bitty, tiny, and there was conflict, and I'm not talking like punching or anything in your household, but just like people arguing, okay? So when you experience conflict, your nervous system knew people were fighting. And then what you saw with your eyes is you saw everybody shut up and leave the room. What do you remember your caregivers doing whenever there was an argument?
Not talking, my stepdad in the room, watching TV, eating fast food, my mom, downstairs doing her own thing, and they won't ever talk about anything. And then like days go by, and I guess once everyone feels like, okay, it's over, let's move on, and they don't ever revisit why they argued in the first place or where the issue was. It's kind of like, let's just move on and pretend like nothing ever happened. That's my relationship with my mom right now still, or she'll do that and like spend months not talking to me. And so like, I'm trying not to do that.
And guess what?
My relationship.
Well, and here's the opportunity. I guarantee you this is something your mother learned. And so this is a generational pattern. And so the opportunity here is for you to not only be able to heal yourself and to be able to strengthen your relationship both to yourself and with your girlfriend, but you also have an opportunity to break a generational pattern, which is super amazing. And it doesn't mean that your mom's a bad person. This is just what she has learned to do.
For sure. My grandma did the same thing, and I'm sure her mom did the same. Yeah.
So here's what I want you to understand about your nervous system. Given that you saw this growing up, you saw them separate, you saw them not talking. What happens now that you're an adult, now that you've seen this, and this is what was modeled for you, is that whenever you're in a situation where you start to feel, uh-oh, my girlfriend's getting upset with me, uh-oh, she wants to talk, uh-oh, we just bickered about something. Before you even think, I got to talk, your nervous system remembers what it was like to be a kid in a household when your parents were about to argue with each other or when your parents got upset with each other. And what you witnessed was separation. So before you even think, what happens is your nervous system goes, oh, wait a minute, I recognize this. This is a moment of conflict. I know what to do. I leave when this happens because that's what I saw. And
run away.
Right?
Yeah.
It happens before you even think about it. And so here's what I want you to understand. You and I can talk about this very easily. Because we're dealing with your nervous system, I'm going to give you a plan. that's going to involve two things. The first thing it's going to involve is things that you can do when conflict arises with your girlfriend in order for you to be able to be more constructive and be more connected with her to resolve conflict. That's number one. The second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you some simple things that you can do to start to get back in touch with yourself. Okay, because this is going to be about you creating new programming, just like a computer. You got your mom and your stepdad and your grandmother's programming in you. We need to update the operating system, okay? And so what I want you to do is, first of all, are you comfortable talking through something that is a conflict? You know what I mean? Like, just talking about it, what do you feel in your body if your girlfriend wants to talk through something and it feels like there's tension? What do you feel?
I just automatically I jump to conclusions, and I start thinking that maybe she's not, even this is not even true. I just make these assumptions that she's not loving me anymore, she's falling out of love, or this relationship is damaged and maybe we can't fix it, and just dumb stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's not dumb, because why do you think you equate any kind of disagreement with a lack of love?
I don't know.
Think back to your childhood. Why do you think disagreeing means lack of love? Is it because your dad and mom divorced?
Well, they divorced, and they fought a lot growing up. A lot of arguing, a lot of verbal abuse, so I don't ever want a relationship like that. Our relationship is not unhealthy. I've really strived to try and be more, not like do anything that's gonna create any kind of like unhealthy relationship, but my inability to communicate is doing that, and it frustrates her a little, and
it frustrates you too.
It does. I really wish I could be more open about how I feel.
Well, I can boil this down to you. You ready?
Yeah. Let's do it.
I think you made a decision a long time ago. And the decision that you made is that couples that fight break up, and couples that don't talk about what's upsetting them stay together.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all that this is. You saw two relationships, and the one that went the longer distance is between your mom and your stepdad. And what you witnessed is they just didn't fight, and somehow they survived. My mom and dad fought a lot, and there was a lot of arguing and verbal abuse. They broke up. And so you have equated fighting and conflict with whether or not a relationship survives.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising to me that because you love your girlfriend and because you want this to work, you would adopt the pattern from the couple that you saw that lasted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And since this is all tied to situations when you're about to start fighting, your nervous system is reminded of this paradigm of this couple fought and broke up, this couple didn't, and they stayed together. And so your nervous system immediately opts for not saying anything. Now, this is a huge insight because it boils it down to something really simple. And what you have to understand based on the research, I'm imploring you, is that the healthiest and happiest long-term marriages are between couples who actually fight. Because knowing how to have a constructive conflict brings you closer together. And so knowing how to have a disagreement and still be able to stand with your partner and work through it, that's what will lead you to not only feeling good about yourself, because then you can express yourself freely without the fear that somebody's not going to love you, but it will also make you and your partner stronger, because you know through the ups and downs of life, you are able to work through these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Terrific. So let me give you some advice for a couple things that you can do. First of all, you said you were reading some books. So what have you tried that has worked so that I can build on it?
Well, right now I'm reading Unfuck Yourself. You know, that's really good. I've read a couple books.
What are you learning though? What is it that's learned that's made a difference for you?
That it's all about your thoughts. You know, learning to take control of your thoughts, and that will lead to you having more control over your emotions and your actions. That, you know, I struggle with, because a lot of times I do think negatively. I just jump to negative thinking a lot.
Well, one thing that you can do for that is I did this free course a year ago called Mindset Reset. It's 30 days long. It's totally free. You should retake it if you've already taken it.
Yeah, I'm going to.
You should use it, the 30 days of videos. Just go to melrobbins.com/mindset reset. It's 30 days of free videos and a workbook. And you should use just your negative thoughts about relationships as the thing that you're going to decode and reprogram in your mind, okay? Because we already know one negative thought you have, that couples that fight break up, and couples that don't fight and give each other the silent treatment, they stay together. It's actually not true. And so you've got to change that opinion. The second thing is that you have decided that when your girlfriend has something that she's in conflict with you about, that it means that she doesn't love you.
Right.
The fact is, if she's coming to you about it, it means she loves you and wants to work through it. And so here's what I want you to start. First of all, does she know that you want to have a breakthrough in this?
Of course. We talk about that all the time. Like once I break through that whole, like, I'm not talking and what's the point? There's no point to this and this is useless. Why talk about it and blah, blah, blah. You know, eventually we'll talk and I'm like, yeah, you know, I do have an issue with, you know, communicating, and I do want to change that. I want to be better.
You don't have an issue with communicating. You have an issue with being loved.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
I don't know. I just don't think I'm worthy in some ways. I don't know. Like before I met her, you know, I was a devoted Christian, you know, and it really took a lot for me to be open to this homosexual lifestyle thing, because it's like wrong. And then the people that you think love you and are there for you, like, kind of turn their back because you're a homosexual. And so, like, yeah, you know, when the people you thought were like your tight circle, you know, they were there for you, and you know, they were like they love you and they love to see you grow and get better. And I was doing great. But then it's like, okay, a huge part of me is missing because, I'm envisioning myself marrying a man and having a husband and having a family, and that's not what I want. That's not what I feel attracted to, and, then I meet her and it's like a huge issue. And so, I left, because I want to be happy too. Why can all of them date and be in relationships and get married and have kids, and then I can't because, I'm not attracted to that, it's just stupid. So, so I left and I moved to St. Petersburg to get away and start a new life and be happy for once.
Well, I'm really proud of you, because moving away and choosing to be happy is probably the first decision that you have ever made where you chose yourself.
Yeah. Instead of what everyone else wants or thinks it's the best thing for me.
Yes, and it is the hardest thing in life to do, to stop making decisions that betray who you are for the sake of what some church says, or the sake of what your friends say, or the sake of what your family expected. And so you should know that you have done the hardest thing in the world for anybody to do, which is to recognize who you are at your core and to choose yourself. And one of the things that is going to be remarkable when you stop going silent, when you argue with your girlfriend, and when you stop using the silent treatment, is that it will be a way for you to choose yourself again. Because I think that when you go silent, it is two things. It's both unconscious because it's what you saw and you want this to work. And so this is the pattern that you saw with your caregivers. That's number one. But number two, it's also the way you test her. So if you go away from an argument, you're taking control by removing yourself and seeing if she actually loves you enough to come and find you.
And she's done that. And I think I have used up all of those chances. And now it's like, I'm not going to chase after you now. I'm not going to do what you want me to do now.
So now the stakes are really high. And so this is the moment that we all change. When you become super present to what a broken pattern is costing you, that is when we all decide to change, because change has to be deeply personal. And so I want you to also realize that just like claiming and choosing yourself and living fully open as a gay woman was a way to choose yourself and to stop betraying yourself, I want you to do the same thing with this communication pattern. Because every time you leave the room, every time you tell yourself that she doesn't love me and she's going to leave me if we fight, and every time you do this, you are actually betraying yourself. Because what I see is a 31-year-old woman who wants to have her voice, who wants to be able to say what is going on with you, who wants to talk about what she's feeling, because for so long you didn't. And so this is your chance with somebody who loves you to start practicing, learning how to choose and honor yourself by giving yourself the permission and the space to say what you're feeling. And so there are a couple things that I think will help you a lot. First of all, I think the two of you should work together to come up with a sentence that you say when you are arguing. And maybe it is something like, babe, I am not going to leave you. I am standing right here. I am not going anywhere. And we need to talk about this. And you need to stand here with me. Like maybe what you need is just that reassurance up front. I love you. This is why I'm telling you why I'm upset. Let's work through it. Maybe you need that as a safe word, so to speak, to cue you that this is a moment to stay. Okay? The second thing that I want you to do is I want you to always use the I statements. So when we get into arguments with the people that we love, or with anybody for that matter, and we start going, well, you do this, and then you raise your voice, and then you do this thing, and right? You always, always, always want to use I feel. So when you start to do this to her, but when you do that and you there's three fingers pointing back at you, and the power is always right here. And so when you're arguing, I know it's uncomfortable for you to talk about your feelings. You can say, I am scared to say this because I'm scared you're going to leave. I'm scared to say this because my mom and stepdad never talked about anything. So this is new for me. You can always talk about what's going on for you. I feel sad when this happens. I feel scared. I feel invisible. I feel worthless. Because a lot of us, when we start arguing, we argue about the bullshit on the surface, but really what's going on is something underneath is getting triggered. And so for you to always anchor in choosing what you're feeling and choosing to say it out loud, it's a way for you to live even more openly and more fully and be more connected to her. The final thing I want to give you is that if this is a really intense argument about something, and you really do need a second to cool down, the only way that it is, I think, respectful to yourself and to your partner, if you need to go do something and remove yourself, is to say, I need 30 minutes. You put a timeline on it. And then you say, and then I promise I will come back and I will resolve this with you. And then I just thought of one more thing. Because this is a situation where your nervous system has taught you to shut up in situations where you feel threatened, and any kind of disagreement makes you feel threatened to your core, you might find it helpful to say, can I just take a second and write how I'm feeling down on a piece of paper? Because in retraining yourself to be able to have conversations that feel full of conflict or make you feel vulnerable or uncertain or scared that she's going to leave, you may not be able to get it all out because you're going to be managing everything that she's doing. So you might want to start by saying, can I just take a minute and just start writing down what I'm feeling so I have it in front of me so that I tell you everything?
Yeah.
What do you think about those steps?
I think those are very useful. I think I can definitely implement those in my life and see how that's going to change things, my relationship with her,
Well, the one thing I know in talking to you is that you're going to be okay. And you are going to have a life full of love because you're doing the really hard work right now of learning how to love yourself. And if you can leave a church and you can leave a friend group and you can leave perhaps some relatives and you can choose yourself and live your life openly and fully as a gay woman, then you are 95% of the way there. It's just now about letting somebody else in to all the things that you're feeling. And you've just faced a ton of assholes who rejected you because of their own bigotry. And so I'm not surprised that this is a really tender moment in your own personal transformation. But every time you choose to stand in that moment that's terrifying, and you choose yourself and you choose to express what you're feeling and you choose to stand there and love yourself enough, you get stronger and stronger and stronger.
What about those moments? Because you're a freaking alpha, right? You're like a whirlwind. You come in. This is what I'm doing. Like you're a beast, and I freaking love it. I mean, I love it. You know I do, right? So like you are this beast, and because I've met Chris, I know how like sweet and quiet he is, and so I actually really want to go deep into being an alpha woman, because I think this is super important. In moments like this, where you're with your husband, in the past, and again, I know that you've really worked on it, and that's very eloquent of where you've gotten now. I'd love to go back a little and say, like, really for the audience to hear how you've actually navigated to get to this point. Because you've definitely spoken about, what do you call it, the breadwinner resentment rage.
Yes.
So if you don't mind taking back, in case people don't know your story, which you've told before, but if you don't mind going back to the moment where, like, 5-second rule freaking takes off, because I really want people to hear where you've come from in your relationship, because it is so powerful for how you navigate, how you've navigated, how you show up, how she shows up, your triggers, his triggers, because there's one more thing I want to add to all of this, is you can't change them. Stop trying to change them. They have to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So to hear how he's evolved is so powerful, and then to also hear how you have evolved is so powerful. But it has been, you guys have done the work separately and then seem like you've come together.
Yeah. So I'm going to preface everything that I'm about to say with this disclaimer. Everything that I'm saying, I can only speak to the pressure that Chris and I felt as a heterosexual couple.
Okay, yeah.
Because so much of the dynamic about resentment and alpha female and all that shit has way more to do with the pressure that are put on men to provide. It has a lot less to do with you being an alpha female as it does with what society says to dudes if you're not the one making the money.
Ooh.
And I didn't realize how big of a deal this was truly until about a year or so ago. So Chris and I, when we met, we both worked. We both contributed to everything. We paid our bills together. We didn't have separate accounts. We just threw it all in together. He worked, I worked. We just ham and egged it. You know, we were co-parenting, co-earning, co-this, co-that. And then he got laid off from a job and decided to go into the restaurant business, which had been a dream, and stepped into entrepreneurship, something he had always wanted to do. It was what his MBA was in. And I was fully not supportive. I was pregnant with our son, and I'm like, wait a minute. God, we're like in that stage of life where we're making the ends meet, but that's it. Was there a trust fund that was part of this arrangement that I'm not aware of? Like, how are we supposed to pay our bills if you're not working? I did not sign up for this. And he basically said, I'm miserable. I'm absolutely miserable. I do not want to work for somebody else. And I'm willing to sell the house. I'm willing to downsize. I am not willing to be miserable to pay for a lifestyle. And we were not living like high in the hog. I mean, this was like not like we're not living in like it's literally like we're in suburbia. Right. And so I'm like, oh shit, he's serious. So at that moment, I said, fine. We did some math. I said, you have 8 months. You got to be earning X. I will take a second job. I'll do whatever I can. But you got 8 months. There's your runway. And if at 8 months you guys have not brought in the funding and you can't be making this, still trying to make it even, Steven. Okay? So in 8 months, they land the funding. He makes the money that we had calculated, and all is fine. So continue to go on where the restaurant's starting. I'm now like doing my thing. I'm making a little more than him at this point because it's a brand new venture. And then all hell breaks loose 3 years into the restaurant business. The US goes into a huge recession. They had 2 of 3 locations that were complete dogs. We were upside down with the house. And there is nothing other than a major health crisis or a death that is more stressful than dealing with no money and not being able to pay your bills. Like, when they've studied this, that there is a significant impact on your ability to be happy and to manage stress based on just an achievable amount of money as a baseline level. It's at this point that my husband's mental health starts to go off a cliff. It's also at this point that my resentment and mental health starts to go off the cliff, because I too have bought into this notion that he's supposed to provide. My money's my money. My money's like the extra money, like the go to Disney World money, the kids can like get new cleats money. His money is supposed to be the money.
Right.
Traditional roles here. And so what's interesting about this is, if you have that experience with your partner, regardless of your gender, regardless of what kind of relationship with you're in, I want you to stop and consider that if you're putting pressure on your partner when it comes to finances, that is your ambition. That is your desire. It is not their responsibility to pay your bills or to provide for you. And too often, we women in particular are looking to a partner to fulfill our own ambition. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, that partner of yours might also have societal pressure to be providing. And, you know, just like we women are trained to kind of look at one another and size each other up, and thin or tall or this or that, and my boobs are this size, like we obsess about how we look and our physical form as a way to compare. Dudes are doing this about their bank accounts and the cars they drive and the house they have, and they are. Because society just keeps reinforcing that. Like, if you're not a dude that can really provide for your family, you're fucked. And providing, by the way, doesn't in society's like lane mean love and emotional connection. It means money.
So true.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so Chris's mental health starts to plummet.
Because also their self-esteem is tied to it.
Correct.
So now it's what they hold their value to now starts to going down. So now their self-esteem starts to go down with it, because that's how they feel that's what they believe that they bring to the table to make themselves feel better.
Just like we women were trained to believe that someday the prince is going to come in, that your worth is about somebody else liking you.
Choosing you, yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, and it doesn't ever occur. Like, I was sitting with our daughters who are 23 and 22 and a group of their friends this summer, and I'm like, when are you guys going to understand that you can choose? Why are you all sitting there talking about how you go out to these bars and nobody comes up to you? Why is it up to them? I think it begins in middle school when you go to the first dance and it's presumed that the little boys are going to ask the little girls to dance.
Yeah.
It's sick, honestly. And but we're all getting it in different ways. And so I'm trying to explain it this way because, you know, I fully own that for a long time in my marriage, I was putting pressure on Chris to either succeed in the corporate world, or I was angry at him because he was failing as an entrepreneur. But all of that was my ambition. See, I married a guy who doesn't give a shit about money. That dude would live in a yurt. I mean, as it is, we live on a mountain in Vermont. You can't see another human being from where we live. You can't even hear them. He would prefer to not have tons of stuff. He doesn't care about that game. He had a father who ran one of the largest advertising agencies in the world, went from mailroom to CEO. And so Chris watched somebody climb the ladder, and he lived in his father's shadow forever and believed that if he were successful in business, he would be able to be respected and loved by his father. That's what that was all about.
And now you're echoing that kind of response.
So of course he marries a woman that is like climbing her own ladder and like literally the personality type of his father. And I chose somebody who is deeply spiritual and grounded and stable and kind, because I would I would self-destruct with somebody that was as ambitious and as crazy as I am. Chris needs my energy and life force, and I need his stability. So, you know, he starts falling off a cliff mentally, because not only is he failing in his business, but friends and family have invested. So he's not only letting himself down, he's got a wife who's pissed off and angry. He's got payroll that's bouncing. He's got a business he's trying to save. He's got investors that he's let down. Like, he was in a really dark place when he finally got out of the restaurant business. By this point, you know, I'm just like trying to keep us above float. I'm working all these consulting jobs. I'm like just doing whatever I can to help us pay the bills. It was awful. And, you know, we slowly start to chip away at it, and they slowly start to turn the business around, and ultimately sold it to an investor, and Chris left. But for the 2 years after he left the restaurant business, he hadn't been paid a salary in a year, and then he spent 2 years just trying to find himself. And I was in charge because he was lost. And I didn't realize how lost he was, because I don't even think he was aware of how lost he was in terms of the shame that men feel when they're not successful, and the self-criticism that they put on themselves when they don't provide. And when you feel that much emotional pain, you either numb it, that's where addiction comes in, you self-destruct. There's all kinds of like terrible things that can happen because we don't want to feel that pain. And so thankfully, Chris, went inward, did a ton of therapy. That's when he became a yoga instructor and started studying meditation and working with a therapist. It took him a while to realize that he was struggling with depression. And that was yet another one of those things. It's like, oh my God, first I can't pay the bills. Now I'm also mentally weak. So he didn't want to even admit that. And I'll tell you, like, there was a lot of rage that I felt and a lot of resentment that I felt. And I guess I felt it because, in the beginning, because I just bought in to what society tells you. And what's interesting is that our kids say, and Chris will say the same thing, and I certainly do, that the greatest gift of their childhood was that from basically most of middle school all the way through high school, Chris has been the primary parent. And Chris grew up with a dad that was never home. And the irony is he always wanted to be an entrepreneur because he thought it would give him more flexibility to be home. And I think oftentimes life hands you what you want, but not in the way you thought you were going to get it. Meanwhile, he's deeply struggling because he feels like, here I am on a Tuesday at 2:30 in the afternoon in the pickup line. And I can sit here and tell myself that I'm happy to be a stay-at-home dad, but the truth is, it feels like there's something wrong. It feels like I failed. And because he didn't say, I want to be a stay-at-home dad, and I'm like, it just is what happened. And meanwhile, I'm all over the place. And we would do this thing where every time the bill would come at a restaurant, I would just kick him under the table to pay it because I knew me putting the card out was very triggering.
For him?
Yes.
How did you feel about that?
I think in the very beginning, I was proud of myself, and then I was kind of annoyed. But what really flipped it for me was this, is when I started to realize that this is actually what I'm ambitious. I love building shit. I'm driven by making an impact. Chris is too, but in a totally different way. And I feel like through all of this chaos, we actually landed in the right roles in our relationship. And the cool thing for our children is they have watched parents go from both earning to dad's an entrepreneur to a business failing to mom stepping into the big role and taking the lead, to dad being home and being around, and how amazing is that, to then dad launching his men's retreat business called Soul Degree, to mom then doing a book, to then dad then getting his master's. He's starting at the age of 53, getting his master's in therapy and psychology. Like, just, they've seen this sort of reinvention, partnership, gender bending, traditional role, like all of it, in the course of, you know, the 26 years that we've been together. And I think that is hugely important, because the truth is that the gender roles that have been imposed on us are complete fucking horseshit. And I personally believe that for women in particular, it is critical that you earn money, because money is power and money is freedom. And money gives you a seat at the table, whether that is your kitchen table, or it is a table at a restaurant, or a table in a boardroom. You cannot deny that there is a power dynamic in money, because I will tell you, in my own relationship, when I was the only one earning money, boy, did the power flip, and boy, did I feel entitled. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, this is the way dudes think. Oh, interesting. Chris and I would get in a fight about something, like I'd be on the road all week traveling. I'd come home tired. He's been home all week with the kids. He's tired. And I come in and whatever it may be, I might dump my suitcase right by the door and spread all my shit out. And he says something. Could you put it in the closet? I can't tell you how many times I almost said, are you kidding me? Do you know I've been working all week? As if what I'm doing is more important than what he's doing. And I think it has less to do with the gender than it has to do with the way that money creates a power dynamic in a couple. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.